Hello, welcome to week 8 of CSM. Today I will be going over the third question, which is insert n. So yeah, let's get started. Um, so to begin, we want to write a function insert n, which takes in an ascending list of numbers list, a number x, and an integer n. If n is positive, insert n mutatively inserts. Oh, if n is positive, insert n mutatively inserts n copies of x into list at the correct position so that list is still in ascending order. If n is negative, insert n mutatively removes n copies of x from list. And here we want to assume that there are always enough copies for x to be removed. Sorry. Yeah, so that seems pretty straightforward. I guess like one of the key things here is that we are mutatively um, affecting the list. So we are changing the original list that we are given. And now we should probably look at the doc test just to see if we have a good understanding of what we have to do. So right now we have an empty list that will look like here. And if we run the insert n command list for 1, we essentially want to make 4 copies or 1 copy of 4. So that will look like this. Right? Because there's nothing in it. It's still considered to be in ascending order. Insert n list 1, 3 indicates that we have to do 3 copies of 1. And it'll look like this to maintain the ascending order condition. If we do insert n list 2, 2, it will look like 1, oh, whoops, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 4. And if you compare it to what the doc test actually has, it is correct. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's get started into implementing the code. Given the skeleton that we are given, we have if, given the skeleton, if n is greater than 0, so if we want to insert copies, we're going to set I to 0, and what else are we going to do? So we're given this while loop, and I guess one clue as to how we should approach this is that we create a variable called I and set that to 0. This kind of indicates that we need to be keeping track of an index. And when we are inserting um, number x, we have to maintain the ascending order of the list. So that kind of lets us think that we should probably be having the condition where if x is greater than the current index of lists that we're on, and right now it'd be I. Yeah, so we start at 0, we increment, or we would be incrementing all the way up to when x is no longer greater than the list element. Yeah, and one thing to note is that when we are dealing with lists and these loops, we want to be careful of um, going outside of the list's length, right? So as a check, we should probably make sure that what I'm about to do is for cases that are like if there are no elements that are greater than the element that we want to insert, this kind of covers it so that it doesn't keep going on forever and ever and ever. And in this case, it will be while I is going to be less than the length of the list, right? And that's so we don't have any out of bounds errors. Yeah, now let's get started. Let's continue. What do we want to do? We want to just keep track of the index. So we want to increment by 1. And essentially, as soon as that while loop ends, we will know where to put our copies. What else? Okay. And after that, once we know where to put our copies, we can run a for loop. So for blank in range is going to be how many copies of x that we do. In this case, it will be n copies, so in range n. And as a reminder, just the underscore that I put is just like a placeholder for like the name of the elements in the range. So since we're not really using it at all, and we're just using it as like an iteration and just like a count of that, we don't need to specify a name for it, and an underscore is like the most convenient thing for that if we don't need to keep track of it. Yeah, and so for n many times, we just want to list dot insert. What do we want to insert at the index, and we're going to insert the element, and it'll keep doing that. Yeah, yeah. And so on the other case, if n is less than 0, or if n is negative, we want to be removing the number x from the list that many times and many times. So again, we're going to have a for loop for in range. And because we can't have any like it makes sense since we're given a negative n to do in range negative n as well to make it positive so that we can positively like iterate through it and get the correct number of times to remove that copy. Yeah, so once we have that, we want to just do list dot remove and whatever the element is. And yeah, that is it.